Welcome back. My apologies for not getting commentary sent yesterday. Just been kind of a whirlwind full of emotions this week as my mother had a heart attack and a quadruple bypass surgery yesterday. So I apologize for not getting that out here to you guys. But a lot to discuss here as we move forward here. Big week next week here with Tuesday's WASDE report. We're going to break down where I think that the Brazilian crop is at this point in the game, and where the corn and bean balance sheets currently are. I think dig into some of the weather models, but obviously let's start off with the beans here. That seems to be the talk of the town here recently. But if you take a look here at the March beans here. Obviously, we broke out of this nice little channel we've been in here since basically July. Basically late last December here. We've continued to make new highs. So what I'm looking at here is a potential correction because we've had this nice move here basically since 1150 without any sort of big break at all. So really what I'm looking at here is the Fibonacci extensions, basically from the low back in May until the recent high and then the recent move up here. So this is going to kind of give us a little bit of guidance as to where we think the soybean market is headed on the front month contract on the March. So right now, you got to be targeting the 50 and the 62% extensions. We've got there. Now, where do we go from here? Now, anything above this 1349.5 area definitely signals like this thing could go up towards 1404. You break there 1473. Those are all targets. Now, you look at the other side of the coin here, and you look at the forecast for out to the next 10 days. You can see that Argentina down here, Brazil has a good chunk of rain coming. So if this stuff materializes, I think it's going to be difficult for the market to maintain the type of pace it's on without any sort of correction. Now, it could certainly, continue higher. I don't doubt that, but looking at the models here, I think you still got to lean to a little bit cautious here. Because right now, Brazil, if they catch these rains, given I think their condition, I think they could be looking pretty good when it comes to the balance sheet. So right now, if I look at the Brazilian balance sheet, and I'm going to bring this in large here for you guys, I'm going to be using 131.6 million metric tons. Now, I know there are some that are below this figure, but I think given the conditions, I think this would warrant it. Now, we're going to leave exports at 85 million metric tons. I think that is a fair estimate given how much the U.S. has pre-sold. We sold a lot, but we have not shipped it. We know China wants the Brazilian beans. Now, whether they actually start taking all the U.S. beans, that's a whole other question, because I am not in the camp that that China bean demand is 120 million metric tons. I don't see that. It could be, but it would be 100 million is already a shock. 120 would be even more of a shock. So I'm leaving it at 85 million. Now, if we have everything left unchanged here on these balance sheet for Brazil, you can still see here we're still left with a stocks-to-use ratio of about 14%. Now, where does it 14%? Well, that seems like it's a fair lofty amount, but I think you got to look back at history. The 1920 crop year, we were at almost 15, a little over it. So if you look back for the previous years here, we've been pretty tight here recently since 2018. 2019, 2020, we've all been right around that 15%. You can see above here, we've been, heck, even in 2010, we were almost at a 40% stocks-use ratio. So a lot of things have changed here within the last 6-7 months that we need to be vigilant of this. The next few weeks in Brazil are critical for the development of rains. Now, like I said, if these things materialize, I do look for a correction in this bean market. Now, where does the correction come from? I think you have to be looking at a 50% retracement from this recent move to the recent high here. I'm not saying this is the high, but let's say it is. This is where I think that the bean market could get a little bit hairy. So if I'm looking at a retracement level, I'm going from here and I'm pegging it right here. I'm looking for right around this retracement figure of around 1266. Now that wouldn't be a shock to me. Now the board currently is at 1374. Now Darren, you're saying that's a $1 sell-off from here. It could be, yes, but keep in mind, a $1 sell-off may feel like, oh, the world is, we're done with this. I don't think that is the case here, because there are some rumors out there that China's buying some July and August beans. Now, that would be really bullish out to the summer months if we do run into some issues. So I'm looking for a correction here. Now, I don't think the correction is going to be any deeper. If this is the high or anywhere near the high, I don't think the correction is any deeper than this 1240 mark. You know, they're somewhere around this 1250. I look for this area to be supportive for right now, especially if we start looking at the U.S. bean balance sheet here. And I'll bring this up for you large too here. So the way I'm looking at the bean balance sheet, where's the carry out here? So carry out right now, we're not down to these levels. I think this is a worst case scenario, but I wanted to show you the worst case scenario, and that is really leaving the exports at 2.2 billion. So what I think happens here is I think we're going to be importing some beans from Brazil. And let's say that's around 30 million bushels. So I think that that's where you're going to get a little bit of help, I think here. And granted, I think these yields are probably going to be somewhere near that 50 and a half, okay? So where do I see some adjustments here? So if I go from a 50 and a half bushel yield and I bring up the imports from Brazil roughly about 15 million bushels, I think I'm going to increase this by roughly 75 million. So let's say 2.275 billion. And I know we're on the pace for greater than that. But as you can see here, it all comes down to the shipments. And until I know more about the Brazilian crop, I think I got to be using somewhere around this 100 million carryout figure. Now, as you can see also, given this carryout, look what happens to the ending stocks. So I think some of this scenario that's coming into play right here is why you're seeing these moves on front month beans as you have been. This almost $2 and some odd cent move higher. That is why. Because I look at here and I'm like, okay, if we're down anywhere here, we have to compensate. And this is exactly why I think that we've done here. We've compensated for some of this. So how do we see the more bullishness out of this? I think you got to see some numbers that are lower than this right now. What about the corn side of things? If we look at the front month corn on the, excuse me, let's go to the March contract. I pulled up the D's there a second. Whoops. March of 21. You can see we've been on a nice tear here too. I'm going to follow, obviously, these technicals very closely here. You can see that we're potentially in a larger fourth wave higher here, maybe a third wave higher. But I look at these levels around this $5 mark. They're all coinciding here with this, call it $4.95, $5. It's all coinciding here. You're seeing maybe a little bit of a topping formation here, near term, because you're just not able to get some flushes above here. Now, if you get above here, and there's no doubt I think you're going to 522. Technically, it would be very, very important if you did there. Technically, also looking at the continuous corn chart here, 522 is an important level. Let's bring this up on a monthly chart so I can show you guys. Okay. Here's the 507 on the monthlies would be very interesting, but here's the 522 level. Okay, 522 3/4 was the monthly high back in May of 14. That's why I'm saying that March high on the daily chart around that 522 is very significant. It's also a monthly high going back on the continuous charts. I do think this market is set up for a little bit of a correction though. Probably not a big one, but it would not shock me to see a 30 or 40 cent setback here, somewhere in the ballpark of 450, 460. Okay, so what does that mean for the U.S. balance sheet? So if I look at the balance sheet here, I'm thinking the yield comes down slightly. I think these are optimistic scenarios here, to be honest with you. But I wanted to show you where some people are at. 176, I do not think they're going to raise the yield. I think we're somewhere around 175.5. Okay, and I do think these corn exports are going to be stronger, so I'm going to wanting to revise that by 100 million bushels higher. So given the scenario that I'm thinking that we develop is I think we have around 175 bushel crop. But because of strong demand, I'm going to increase it by 100 million. This leaves our carryout somewhere around this 5.8 billion bushels. Leaves our carryout near 10.5%, which you can see back, you're going to back, the last time we were even close to these levels was 13, 12, 11, 10. So we are the lowest we've had been in about 6 some years. So I do think that if this market does continue higher here, I think you look at some December 21 corn and you start thinking about the acreage picture. And right now, I think cotton is having a very difficult time competing with what corn and beans are doing here. I did make a 10% sale this week, or 10% cash sale, hedge sale, HTA sale, however you want to view it, at this 439 level. And the reason why I did 439 is the 62% extension level. I'm going to follow the technicals very closely here. Where I got that was I'm looking at the longer term low here, and I'm looking at it from here to here, and the recent breakout. The recent breakout is where I'm getting the extension levels. Anything above 439, I don't think nothing could stop it right now unless you see some weakness in some outside markets, and beans in particular. I do think there is in time a move towards 460, maybe on in the summer months. But with that being said, I think you have to watch what gold's doing. Now, I don't focus on gold here a lot, but to yesterday's move has to be paid attention to. We fell almost $80 an ounce. This could be a signal as something to come. Here's the last big move lower. We've seen a massive sell-off in March. We know what happened last March in these grain markets. Here's another sell-off here in November. Here's another one in August. These are all coinciding with moves lower in gold, risk-off trade. It also coincides with equity markets having some pressure here. Now, I'll dig into a little bit on the commentary part about the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index, but this is all I have for this week. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and any questions, concerns, comments, you can always text me at 312-858-3668. That is my new Chicago number. You can always reach me at that number, and that number again is 312-858-3668.